Okay, it looks like it started. It's live. Hello, everyone. We're here for another Azure PowerShell and .NET Community Stand-Up. We've got a few guests today talking about some of the new features that we've shipped in the July release, and we're going to be talking about some of the core engineering improvements that we made, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we have going on in the future. So to start us off, we have Shri from the Azure Stack team. He's going to talk a little bit about Azure Stack, what's going on, timelines, and some of the, I think he has a short demo for us as well. So Shri, would you like to go ahead and take it away?
Sounds good. I will. Let me share my screen and we can get started.
Awesome.
All right. Can you let me know when you can see it?
Yep, we can see it.
All right. Perfect. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. My name is Sriram Natarajan. I'm a program manager working on the Microsoft Azure Stack product. I'm here today to quickly give you an idea of what Azure Stack is, for those of you who are not aware of the product, and show you a really cool demo on what we've been doing with Azure PowerShell, CLI, and other tools to give developers a consistent development experience across public and private clouds. So what is Azure Stack? Azure Stack is the product that helps you or your organization run Azure services in your data centers. This is your private cloud of sorts. The way we've built Azure Stack is to be consistent with Azure. So the exact same services and the infrastructure, or rather the exact same resource providers that are running in Azure, packaged in a way that you can install it in your data center. This, what you see is the strawman version of the Azure architecture. On the top, you have the client tools that we all interact with, Portal, PowerShell, and other DevOps tools that interact with the API layer, which is the Azure Resource Manager. And the Azure Resource Manager sends the request to the resource providers like IaaS, websites, databases, PaaS services. And they all run on the Azure cloud infrastructure. Is born out of Azure. So basically, the exact same Azure Resource Manager that is running in Azure is also available as a part of Azure Stack. We're bringing down Azure services to run in your data center. So the compute network storage that you see in Azure is brought down to Azure Stack and works the exact same way. In addition to this, we've also brought down app services, so web apps, functions. We also have Key Vault. We're bringing in a SQL adapter and a MySQL adapter for database services. And we're working on consistently bringing more Azure services down to Azure Stack. And all of this run on infrastructure in your data center. This is the side-by-side comparison of what Azure is and what Azure Stack is. Now, because it's the same service, as a developer, as somebody who is deploying and managing and maintaining applications, you now do not have to have multiple different configurations or different deployment scripts or re-architect your apps differently to run on different clouds, which is the case if you go to other public clouds and private clouds today. Is there are services that are available, say, in AWS, which are completely different from the way things run on OpenStack. So if you write the same application that needs to run on, say, AWS and OpenStack in terms of hybrid application models, you'll have to re-architect them and structure them differently and maintain different configurations and deployment scripts for both. Whereas in the Microsoft, in the Azure and Azure Stack ecosystem, you can write the app once and you can deploy it either to Azure or the Azure Stack that is running inside your data center and easily start building hybrid applications. That is the value prop. As a result of this, because we have the same API consistency, the same workloads that you can deploy in Azure can also be deployed on Azure Stack. The goal that we're trying to achieve with Azure and Azure Stack is to have a single Azure ecosystem where if you write a template, if you write a workload that you can deploy on Azure Stack, you will be able to deploy the workload in the exact same way in Azure as well. You can see Chef, Cloud Foundry, Docker, Mesos, OpenSUSE, and blockchain are some of the things that we're trying to get working on Azure Stack as well. And you can test this out with Azure Stack today. If you're in the DevOps model, if you are looking to do continuous integration, continuous deployment, either be it with Visual Studio TFS or be with open source like Jenkins. You can totally do that in the exact same way as you do it in Azure, because everything is template based. You will be able to deploy Azure templates on Azure Stack as well. Initial spiel about consistency with Azure and Azure Stack. Now, because we built the APIs to be consistent, it makes it so much more easier for the tools like PowerShell or a Python CLI or a Node CLI to be able to call the exact same API. All they have to do is, hey, do I want to go against Azure? So I send it to a different endpoint. Or do I want to go against Azure Stack? I just send it to a different endpoint that is running in my data center, and everything else is exactly the same way. And that's the demo that I'm going to show you today.
Awesome.
All right, let's jump right into it. Okay, so I'm going to be telling you about two things today. We've been working with the Azure PowerShell teams pretty closely, so that if you're using Azure PowerShell to deploy against Azure, you're familiar with a lot of these commands. I'm here to show you that the exact same commands can be pointed to Azure Stack, and you can run them the exact same way in Azure Stack as well. The second thing I'm going to show you is we're introducing a concept called API profiles. I'll give you a sneak preview about what API profiles are. I'm not going to go into much depth about them. That's a story for another day. But we're trying to get these concepts of profiles going. I'll talk a little bit about profiles and what they constitute, and I'll show you how you can deploy, manage resources across Azure and Azure Stack with Azure PowerShell seamlessly. Right? Let's jump right into it. So first thing, profile. We're introducing this concept called profile, where a profile is a collection of API versions. So a 2017, 03, 09 profile has, it's a hash table, if you will, of namespaces to API versions. So a Microsoft.compute namespace with an API version 2015, 01, 01. I'm just throwing out numbers here. Microsoft.network namespace with another API version is all packaged together in one profile. So when you're deploying an application, when you're working with templates or with PowerShell or with CLI or anything to that effect, you do not have to remember 15 different API versions for the resource provider. All you have to remember is one API profile, and that maps to a number of different API versions that the tools will take care of and will handle. All right, so you can install the profile handling tools by installing the Azure RM Bootstrapper. This is a module that the Azure PowerShell team has written to handle API profiles and be able to load the appropriate versions of the modules based off of the profile that you specify. So you can just do install module Azure RM Bootstrapper. That will get the Bootstrapper module, and you can specify use Azure RM profile and specify the profile version. Now, the good thing about the profile version is if you specify a certain profile that is that can work with Azure Stack, that exact same API profile will work with Azure as well as other sovereign clouds. So profile is effectively a collection of API versions that will work across all of the different Azure clouds, be it Azure Germany, be it Azure China, be it Azure Government Cloud or public Azure, and Azure Stack. So you can pick a profile and your apps can be deployed across multiple different clouds. So I've installed, I'm basically going through these really quickly because I've already installed these modules on my machine. But you can get the Azure Stack module as well directly from the PowerShell console window. Now, here's the kicker. You've used the Azure RM environment commandlets before. So you've been able to...
Just for a second, so people understand, the Azure Stack module is something specific for administering Azure Stack. It isn't actually part of like writing an Azure application you'd expect to be portable.
That is correct. Thank you for the clarification, Mark. Yes, that is correct. So this is just if there are commands that are very specific to Azure Stack that you can get by installing the Azure Stack module. If that is not your goal, you can totally install the public version of Azure PowerShell and be able to get the profile going so that you can deploy your applications.
And these are about actually managing the Azure Stack module. Is actually about managing the Azure Stack installation. It's not about managing your resources in Azure Stack or Azure. It's not about the Azure application itself. It's about the Azure Stack clusters. Correct?
Infrastructure management commandlets. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. They're infrastructure management commandlets.
Got it.
So once you have these modules, all you have to do is do an add Azure RM environment. So usually when you do get Azure RM environment, you see Azure Cloud, Azure China Cloud, Azure Germany Cloud. What you can do is you can say add Azure RM environment and say add Azure Stack Cloud, and you can give it an ARM endpoint. So basically, I'm saying that, okay, my Azure Stack environment's ARM endpoint is at management.local.azurestack.external. So I'm just going to say add Azure RM environment, give it a name, and then give it an ARM endpoint. Now, in ARM, we've built a functionality where it will expose all the other endpoints that you need to be able to authenticate with that particular cloud. You can see this not just in Azure Stack, but in Azure as well. So what you can do is do an add Azure RM environment. I'm going to go to this if it doesn't already exist. Okay, so now I've added an Azure Stack Cloud. As you can see here, it's given me the resource identifier, where the portal is, where the ARM endpoint is, and also the login endpoints for Azure Active Directory, Graph, and it's given me some suffix. So a more understandable version of this would be this. So I'm getting it, I'm selecting name. You can see Azure Cloud, Azure China Cloud, Azure US Government, and you can see your Azure Stack Cloud, just like how you would see the other sovereign clouds. Now, I've already logged in to the Azure clouds and the Azure Stack environments, but you can set profiles. This is not API profiles. This is just profiles, user profiles inside Azure PowerShell. So I can log in to the different clouds. So I'm going to log into my Azure Stack Cloud. Actually, I've already logged in, and this is stored in my Azure Stack. And I've also already logged into Azure, and this is stored in my Azure environments. So all I can do is I'm going to select my Azure Stack profile, just like so. It will give me my directory tenant, my subscription ID that I have in this particular cloud, which is Azure Stack, right? And the standard get Azure RM resource group commandlet, pretty standard, right? This is exactly what you would do in Azure as well, except now it is giving me the set of resource groups that is in my Azure Stack Cloud. As you can see, the location is not any of the Azure locations. It's a local. It's basically because it's running under a box in my desk. So the location is actually local. So I can do a get Azure RM resource group. Now, if I want to create a resource, I'm giving you a very simple example here, but you can kind of extrapolate this into more complicated scenarios. I'm just going to create a storage account. Right? Like I can deploy templates with this. I can orchestrate template deployments with this. I can pretty much extrapolate this to more complicated scenarios, but just from perspective of understanding, I'm just going to create a storage account, and there it is. It's already created a storage account with just the Azure RM storage account commandlet. So this is exactly how consistency works in your favor. Because it's the same API, the tools are not doing anything. They're not forking the code. They don't have an if-else statement for if Azure Stack do this or if Azure do this. They're basically having the exact same code. All we're doing is selecting an ARM endpoint for the tools to go towards. And if it's been changed to Azure, it's going to go to a different endpoint. If it's changed to Azure Stack, it's going to go to a different endpoint, and it's going to do the exact same thing. Now I'm going to select Azure just to complete the story. Now, as you can see, Azure Cloud is selected. My same identity is going across my Azure and my Azure Stack environments. That's a bonus because I'm in an enterprise. I have my private cloud. We also have public cloud investments. So the same identity is going across Azure and Azure Stack. I'm using to manage it. And you can use user accounts or service principals to do this. There is really no difference. So, and the exact same commandlets. I'm going to do a get Azure RM resource group commandlet, just like how I did before. Of course, I have significantly more number of resource groups in Azure because 25,000 other people. But a get Azure RM resource group works. And I'm going to deploy a new storage account in my Azure environment with the exact same commandlet as I did with my Azure Stack. As you can see, the location is West US right now, not local. As it was in my Azure Stack environment. I'm giving it a different location because it's in Azure. and there you go. The storage account was created. So with the same Azure PowerShell, you're able to consistently manage resources across your public cloud and your private cloud without having to have different scripts or different kinds of configurations. You're able to just log into a particular cloud, switch context, and say, I want to go to my public cloud, execute the set of commands, switch to a private cloud, execute a certain set of commands, and you're able to deploy and manage applications. The best case example for this is when you want to deploy hybrid applications, when you want to deploy the same application to Azure and to Azure Stack. This is very useful for you because all you have to do is write one deployment script and just log into the different environments and execute the same script block in both clouds. This is also useful when you want to split your application across Azure and to Azure Stack. I want to throw your front ends into public Azure so that it's more globally distributed, but you have data and geopolitical constraints, so your databases will go into Azure Stack. So you can use the same Azure PowerShell commandlets to deploy a web apps template to Azure and a SQL database templates to Azure Stack and actually hook them up. And that's the consistency promise, and that's how consistent you can work with Azure PowerShell, regardless of if it's Azure, Azure Stack, or other Azure sovereign clouds.
Awesome.
I just have one more thing that I want to show you guys is just a item slide. So now that you've seen what Azure is and you've seen what Azure Stack is, please go ahead and take a look at the Azure Stack SDK. We've already RTM'd the Azure Stack SDK, so you can download it. It's in GA. We announced it at Inspire last week or a couple of weeks ago. So you can download the development kit version of Azure Stack today online. So please go to aka.ms Azure Stack. You'll be able to find information about it. Deploy the app services, the PaaS, web apps, and functions on your Azure Stack environment, and try your templates that you're working with Azure. Make sure you go take a look at the profile and see how you can customize Azure Stack to your use case.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, Shri. Do you have any? Do you guys have any questions for Shri before we continue? Awesome. So I think we also Anavi joined. So I think she may want to talk about some VMSS updates that we have. Although I'm not sure if we're ready quite yet. So feel free to chime in at any point, Anavi, and we will talk about VMSS.
Aaron, yeah, just give me a second. We're just setting up over here, and then I'll.
Oh, cool, perfect. We'll have Cormac talk about the Hotfix release real quick then while you guys are setting up, and then we'll switch back over.
Yep. So last earlier this week on which day was it? Tuesday, I believe.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Tuesday we came out with release 4.2.1 of Azure PowerShell, which had some of the compute commandlets that had changes in the previous release 4.2.0. Scenarios such as creating managed disk and creating VM snapshots were altered a little bit in the last release and were unable to work properly. So we worked with the compute team to get out a quick fix for that. So now if you're having trouble running those commandlets using 4.2.0 or previous releases, you can now download 4.2.1 from the gallery, from Web Platform Installer, or from the releases section on our GitHub repository page, and get the updated bits that have the fix for those commandlets. And the hotfix also included a fix for add Azure account, logging in using a service principal. What was the exact?
Yeah, there were some scenarios using username and password that were failing without a workaround. So we just slipped that in because we had the fix ready as soon as fix went in. So hopefully most people won't even notice because most people probably hadn't updated their RDFE commandlets from the last version. So anyway, as always with any of these things, you can always find the release notes. So exactly what changed in a release by looking at the actual package inside the PowerShell gallery. So that's if you ever want to know what's going on with release, that's always the best place to start.
How do I get there? What's the easiest way to see that package?
Well, go to the PowerShell gallery and just click on items, and by Azure RM is the Azure RM modules are all like on the first page.
Yep, awesome.
So it's like PowerShellGallery.com/items/Azure RM, I believe.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
Gallery items Azure RM. It's pretty much there.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, the release notes are in the package. They're also on GitHub. So check out the releases section on GitHub and you can see the release notes. And the links to the MSIs and things like that are also on GitHub. So
Correct.
Awesome. Thanks, Cormac. Anavi, are you ready over yonder?
Yes. Thanks, Aaron
Awesome.
and Cormac. I highly appreciate it. So hi, everyone. I'm Anavi Nahar. I'm a program manager here in Azure Networking. Thanks for joining. Good morning, good evening, depending on wherever you're at. I also have Deepak here with me, who worked really effortlessly on a lot of these networking features for VM scale sets. So just a quick heads up, if you don't know what VM scale sets are, it's basically a way to deploy thousands of machines, identical machines at the same time. And through this, you're able to scale extremely easily. So instead of having to clone a VM or redeploy 1,000 VMs 1,000 times, you can just do it with the click of a button in Portal, where you can scale up, scale down, basically size up or size down. We have supported VM scale sets since 2016. However, we haven't extended a lot of the networking features to it until very recently. So that brings me to exactly what we have brought to it. So a bunch of different things. Number one would be security. So we now support network security groups for virtual machine scale sets. So through this, you're able to isolate the kind of traffic that you want to send to specific scale sets or specific instances within that. Another good update that we had was multiple IPs. So in order to get to your scale sets until very recently, you couldn't get to your individual VMs through a public IP. You had to load balance them in order to get to those individual instances. So we've added also the ability to support public IPs on each of those instances in your scale set. So let me give you an example of why this is helpful. Think of Xbox, for example, right? So you have these game rooms that they launch, and they want to be able to launch them really quickly. And what's happening under the covers is you have this public IP that you're given when you join a game room. They spin up a virtual machine. You know, do your games or whatever it is you play. You can tell that I don't, use Xbox. But basically you play your game and then you quit your game room. But the ability to do that super quickly, in the back, you don't want someone manually trying to deploy a machine, right? So that's the use case for public IP. Another interesting one that we did was multiple NICs. So each of your VMs in the scale set can have multiple NICs. This is super helpful for network virtual appliances, like devices like firewalls, load balancers, that we have in the Azure Marketplace. So they want to be able to scale these devices extremely quickly. So a lot of our partners have been asking for this feature tremendously. So these are a few of a lot of the updates. Let me just share my screen on just resources and what things look like in PowerShell. Give me a second.
Cool. And I have to apologize. I realized that I was pronouncing your name incorrectly. So
You're totally fine.
I put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Okay, I'm having trouble just sharing my screen for some reason.
I think it's
The green
did you
button.
try to share it and it's just not working?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I've had that problem before as well. I'm not sure what. Is there something that I could access and share, or is it just local to you?
I think I am
Oh,
screen.
there you go. Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So all right. So this is what the network security group looks like in VM skill set. Are you able to see that? Maybe I should enlarge this for a second.
Yeah, that would be. I can see it, but yeah, it's a little small.
No, it's not helping. But basically, this is exactly what the template looks like for the network security group that you can associate each of your individual skill sets that I was talking about previously. And especially you can add the DNS settings and DNS servers specifically from your virtual network that your skill set is part of. In addition, that's what the public IP configuration looks like. So here we have within the network interface configuration of the skill set, inside that we have this property called IP configurations, and within it you'll have the name. Here we were just testing it, so we called it a test public or a test IP configuration. And you can also set idle timeout in minutes and exactly what your label is. So the highlighted portion is all new. That was something that we were working on and just recently launched. In addition, I also have what it looks like in PowerShell. So specifically, my PowerShell is updating. I wanted to give a demo, but here I am, living life on the edge. So this is exactly what the IP configuration would look like. So we added this property that I was talking about, the IP configuration, and you can see it's called pub1, similar to what I have in the template over here, pub1. So that's the public IP one. You can also configure the idle timeout in minutes, exactly kind of mirroring my template. This is exactly what the equivalent in PowerShell is.
Awesome.
And here is where you have the DNS server settings that you can also add that I was highlighting earlier. So the basic command is just an update to the new Azure VMSS config skill set PowerShell command. So we're just adding all these different properties to it in order to have parity between what we have for standalone VMs for skill sets, because with skill sets, you can do a lot of different things. Gaming was one. We also had a scenario where Couchbase, and we actually talk about this in our blog as well, and they actually started using the public IP feature in preview, which was really cool. And through working with customers in our preview, we were able to make the feature a lot better and just make sure it's exactly what they were looking for as well.
Cool.
And also, in order to get the public IP addresses, so let's say your Xbox and you want to get all the public IP addresses that you're currently using for your different game rooms, you will just run a simple get Azure RM public IP address command, specify what your resource group is and what your skill set name is. Similarly for the interfaces as well. So you don't have to manually actually note down each and every IP address. You can just yeah, exactly. You can just pull it through the get public IP address command as well as the network interface command, because the NSGs and multiple IPs would all be associated to the network interface.
Got it. Very cool. Yeah, that makes it a lot easier than having to pull every single VM.
Exactly. And I do have kind of a skill set that I deployed currently, and it is this is the Resource Explorer view from resources.azure.com. And I know everyone can see my subscription information, but I trust that you will not share it. But here's kind of exactly what it looks like for a running skill set right now.
Yeah, thankfully, no one can really do anything with that GUID.
Perfect. Always good to hear.
It's not really secure.
I know, they would also need my password, but still.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you, Anavi. I really appreciate you coming and telling us about the new features in VMSS. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, check out the blog. We have our Couchbase use case scenario as well as kind of exactly what we do for VMSS. We have our updated PowerShell commands in there as well. So I think that'd be super helpful.
So yeah, Aaron, can we maybe paste that into the could we paste that in after we're done with the when this recording gets uploaded so people can go to the blog post?
Yep, Anavi, if you can just send me the links, I'll add them to the description in the YouTube video.
Totally, will do. Thanks so much, guys, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, cool. So I think we're going to move on to some future stuff, some planned work that we have going on. Oh wait, no, there was one more thing. I was supposed to talk about NetCore. So over the past few months, probably I think we talked about it a bit either last time or the time before. I showed a Docker image running on, I think I was on a Mac, running on a Mac using Azure PowerShell in the Docker container on a Mac. So that should be, we were joking about it before we started. We are on the precipice of releasing those .NET Core based Azure PowerShell modules to the gallery soon.
Let's call it a verge, not a precipice. That's
a verge.
Nobody's falling off anything.
Nobody's falling. Yeah, I guess precipice is often used as more of a negative connotation. So yeah, we are on the verge, not the precipice, on the verge. So I think last we checked, we're just doing some final testing, getting it up on the gallery, and then we will also spin off a public Docker image. All of our Docker images for all of the Azure tooling that we ship is in Azure, the Azure SDK repository. So just Azure SDK, look for that in the Docker Hub. We have an Azure PowerShell image and an Azure PowerShell core image. The core image right now, it still works. You can use it. But it's still technically in beta. That's why we have no version numbers. But we are releasing the .NET Core based versions of the modules soon. So I'm hoping that it will actually be early next week, early next week.
Just to give people some insight into what's going on, everybody who's using PowerShell Core would note that there have been some recent changes to the underlying .NET Core libraries, and because we're a binary module, we're sensitive to what some of the versions of those libraries are. So
yeah.
This is just like dotting the I's and crossing the T's about making sure that the update to modules that just happened didn't actually break anything. So we're basically like on the verge. When we say on the verge, it's like day to day. Is it going to happen? It's going to happen in a matter of days, as opposed to
weeks.
As opposed to weeks.
Yes.
So
awesome. Yeah. So that's kind of the update on .NET Core. So keep a lookout for information and posts on that. And it's basically same modules, but built on .NET Core so that it can run cross-platform. Okay, cool. So we're going to move over to some future quote-unquote topics. And the first one is persistence and context work. And I think Mark is going to tell us a little bit about that.
Awesome. So yeah, this very, very much like .NET Core. I think we talked about this in the last two.
Yeah.
And actually, some of the things that you just, some of the discussions that we just had, some of the great partners we had come in to talk about this stuff, is unfortunately part of the reason why this stuff has slipped out a little bit. We want to make sure that we get the latest Azure stuff out to you, and sometimes that takes precedence over some of the core features we want to have. So the two things I kind of want to talk about feature-wise, one is persistence. So persistence is planned for this milestone, so should go out with the August release when that goes out. For basically what this entails is being able to, whenever you open up Azure PowerShell, or whenever you open up a PowerShell session by default, you will be using the last login that you used inside that session. You'll also be able to switch between a couple of saved logins you have, or you'll be able to just completely opt out, so that every time in a particular session you can just basically turn off persistence, and then just have the authentication be specific to that session. So that is coming, and part of that kind of leads to the second topic, which is asynchronous commandlets. So if we look at the requests that we have from customers, asynchronous commandlets are among the top things we want to do. We've been looking at supporting an as job parameter, as people have been following this know. And we're also looking at maybe having a slightly different pattern that would not require using a background process like as job does. So I will be filing an issue later this week, which goes through what the proposal is for how we would support the not as job. So not requiring a process to actually make the processing asynchronous, so you can start an operation and then come back and check back later if you want to see what happened with the operation without us having to take up a process on your machine. So expect to see that. We'll post out the link to it to the Hangout, and as we've done before with some of these issues where we're soliciting comments, like your feedback on what the design is, and what you think about it, and then we'll look at implementing that after we've got after we have the context persistence stuff in and shipped.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, Mark. So I think one other thing we wanted to talk about was how we evaluate issues, how we're trying to do better and better at responding to them, but also better and better about prioritizing them based on community feedback. So I think Cormac was going to talk a little bit about how we plan on doing that, or how we're doing that today. Maybe, Mark, are you going to drive, or do you want me to share my screen while Cormac talks?
Why don't you go ahead and drive?
Okay, I'll drive, and then Cormac, do you want to drive me?
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let's get this going then.
So one of the ways that we evaluate issues is that there's numerous ways that GitHub allows you to filter issues. One of the main ways that we filter issues when we want to see what people are talking about is by the number of comments, and I think that's the most reasonable way for us to see which issues are popular and which ones are getting the most attention. And of course, you'll get those issues that have people just going back and forth and discussing. But there's a lot of issues where people will add a lot of comments saying ran into this issue as well, or like +1, gave it a thumbs up, items like that. So when we look at issues to tackle for milestones, apart from the stuff that we need to get done, we try to take a look at the issues that are getting the most views, getting the most buzz around them, people running into this issue. Perhaps it's something that was broken in a release that just happened. For example, the issues that we were having with import Azure RM context and the corresponding save commandlet were someone opened an issue after, I believe, the May release when we introduced those changes to those commandlets, and a lot of people were having issues with that, and that was one of the main things that we worked on over the last 2 releases to get a fix out for that. So that was that we identified that because it was an issue that was just open after the release, so it was a recent issue, but then it was also an issue that was gaining a lot of popularity, if you want to call it that. And so another way that that's probably our main way that we look at issues. Another way that we like to tackle issues is just looking at, as silly as it sounds, we look at the reactions or the emojis associated with the issues, which GitHub somehow allows you to filter by, which I think is funny. And though that's not quite as proficient as searching by comments, you still get a good amount of issues where people will thumbs up something like an idea, or thumbs down and something that, like a scenario that they don't like that's happening to them and that someone filed an issue for. So we tend to look at issues that way. And as you can see from your screen, one of the main issues that is coming to the top, be it by comments or by thumbs up, thumbs down, is the asynchronous operations. And that's one of the things that we touched on earlier, and one of the things that we want to make happen in upcoming releases. So I can't remember what other issues that were tackled recently. I think there was one with networking and then how the auto mapper works. That was a highly requested fix, and one of the external users outside of Microsoft went in and fixed that, and that got resolved in one of the previous releases. So it was nice to have external contributions for these popular. In general, it's nice to have external contributions, and it's very nice when it happens for these large issues that people are facing.
Yeah, awesome. So,
so I mean,
go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, I think that the message is we're looking at when you make comments on issues, we are looking when you do upvotes, downvotes, hearts, and all the various emotions you can give on issues. So we're looking at that stuff to see which things are real mind for our community, to decide how to help us decide how to prioritize our work. So
Yep.
so keep doing that. Also, GitHub allows us to actually look at the number of views of an issue. That's under polls. It's a little. I wouldn't go there because it's a little hard to get to. It can tell us all kinds of things about where people are looking at our repo. But when we find that people are looking at an issue an awful lot, that's another thing we use to push it up to the top. So keep looking at the issues, keep commenting on the issues, keep upvoting the issues, downvoting the issues, and we are paying attention.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest takeaway is it's, whether this is the best or worst way to sort issues, it's the kind of the best we've come up with right now to do some investigation on what we should prioritize. And instead of just doing that, we should also let all of you, the community, know that that's kind of what we're doing. And so that's the best way to give us an idea of what the general feeling is about one issue or another.
So, shouldn't be the idea that's the only thing we're using. If those of you who've opted into telemetry, we're using the client-side telemetry to help us decide which issues have more impact than other issues, where it's not used in isolation. There are definitely other things we're using, but this is an important way that we can see which issues are important to you. So
yeah. And that's a good segue into the next topic. I think we've talked about it the last few times. We have a new-ish commandlet called send feedback. It's just send-feedback, and its primary purpose is for you, the user, at any point you're in the prompt, creating a new VM, creating a new web app, doing some machine learning, something like that, and you really liked something you saw, you really disliked something, something was difficult, confusing, not enough help, not enough samples, typos in the helps or samples, anything that it is, just send us feedback, type send feedback, and we'll ask you a few questions, a little bit of what did you like, what do you not like, and if it's just a negative comment, then you can say not applicable on positive. If it's just a positive comment, you could say not applicable on negative. And then feel free to also add your email if you'd like us to maybe follow up with you at some point about the issue that you were facing or the problem that you had. So please do let us know how you feel about Azure PowerShell. It sounds kind of cheesy, but it really is important. It goes hand in hand with our issues. We can't really evaluate where the product should go unless we get good feedback about the product. So please comment on the issues, upvote the issues, also send us feedback immediately as you it may not be a bug, it just might be something that you do or do not like. So just send us feedback, let us know what you think, and that'll help us improve the product as we move forward. And I think the last thing we were going to talk about, unless I'm mistaken. Oh, I did it. We're good. Yeah, we're close to the last thing. Is experimentation. I think we talked a little bit about it last week. I showed some very preliminary designs on kind of the direction we'd like to start going in simplifying some of the commandlets, simplifying some of our creation scenarios. I have been running interviews. Some of you watching either now or in the future may have been interviewed. You probably saw me in this room, or 50-50 chance, I'd say. And we did a lot of interviews about what people liked, didn't like about their current experience, about some of the designs that we have, what they think works well, doesn't work well. So that just kind of goes into this whole bucket of we're really trying to engage all of you in how the product should be shaped moving forward. And so all of these things, GitHub, send feedback, interviews that we've been running, all of them kind of go into this bucket of building the best product we can. So please feel free to email us as well, give us your feedback in any way you can. But one thing I did want to do is let Nelson talk about some of the work that he's been doing kind of in parallel with me. Nelson has been starting some work on the web app commandlets, kind of with the idea. Sorry, does Mark have to run to another meeting?
We have 6% battery. He needs to connect the computer.
Oh no. Okay, so yeah, Nelson, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing over the last month or so with regard to experiments. Are you guys muted or something? Or is it about to die? I can't tell. Maybe I think they died. I think the computer might have. Okay, so I might have to wrap us up. That's amazing. Oh,
yeah, they definitely died.
Okay, they're gone. Thanks, Anavi, for letting me know that. Anavi, dang it, for letting me know that you also experienced them freezing.
They picked the perfect frame to drop off.
They really did. They
That's
really
quite
did.
funny.
You could see it there at the bottom. So basically, like I said, we've been running experiments on and doing interviews on some of the designs that we have moving forward. The people who have joined us today, Shri and Anavi, would let you know that we've even been approaching some of our teams about the fact that we're looking at some of these ideas. But Nelson has been working on some web app commandlets, and we're actually planning on shipping a preview module that kind of sits side by side with current Azure PowerShell that implements some of these designs. So, less need for passing in objects, more kind of simple types as parameters. So I think I showed this last week, but it kind of makes sense. If you just want one VM, it doesn't necessarily make sense to have you give us the whole configuration of the NSG or the whole configuration of your VNet. It might make sense for us to infer some of those things, or maybe you just pass us the address prefix that you want for your subnet, and we create the VNet with the proper subnet and address prefix for you. Things like that. So Nelson has been working on doing some similar things for web app commandlets that we plan on shipping, and then letting the community know, hey, we've got this out there, try it out, let us know what you think. What do you like? What don't you like? Why didn't you like it? Things like that. Again, still goes into all that same bucket of we're really trying to get feedback on where the product should go moving forward, how it can be better, and how we can provide the best possible experience for all of you, our customers. So thanks again for Stack and VMSS coming to talk to us. Really appreciate it. I'll post links in the description. It looks like they might have joined back. I don't know if... Okay, yeah, so please let us know if you have... Are you guys back?
Hello?
Do I hear you? I hear you all now. I kind of stole your thunder, Nelson, because I thought it's possible you guys might not be coming back. Are you guys here? Did you make it? I don't think they can hear us.
Hello?
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 Hello. All right, I think I'm going to have to stop it here. But thank you all for joining us or watching in the future. And please tune in about a month after our next release for information about what we did in that release and what we have planned moving forward. Can you guys hear us now? No, it doesn't look like they can. They look frozen again. So thank you all for joining. Appreciate it. Have a nice day, night, evening. As we all have said, we don't know where you are. Thank you.